Free after 22 years. Taste of Freedom. Chapter 1. I spent 22 long years in prison. I had done nothing wrong, but no one believed me. No matter what I said, no matter how much I cried, no one listened. The days inside were long and slow, and the nights were cold and lonely. Every morning, I woke up in my small cell. The walls were made of cold grey stone, and the door was heavy and thick. I had no freedom at all. I could not see my family. I could not walk outside. I could not even feel the sun on my skin. Every day was the same, over and over again, like a broken record that never stopped playing. One morning, something strange happened. A guard came to my cell. He unlocked the door and opened it. I looked at him, confused. His face was not angry like usual. His eyes were not cold and hard. Instead, he looked calm, almost kind. He looked at me and said, "You can go home now." At first, I thought I heard him wrong. His words sounded strange, almost like they were from a dream. My voice came out small and weak as I asked, "Why?" My hands were shaking badly. My body was cold, even though the room was warm. The guard said, "They found a mistake. You didn't do anything wrong." When he said that, my heart started to beat faster. It was like a drum pounding inside my chest. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking under me. I walked out of my cell. Even though the prison was huge, I knew every wall, every door, and every shadow. I had lived inside these walls for so long, they felt like part of me. I walked past the other prisoners. Some of them looked at me with sadness. Some looked angry, some looked lost, as if they didn't understand what was happening. I didn't look back. I kept moving forward. My heart was racing. My mind felt empty. My body felt light, like I might float away at any second. When I reached the big front gate, a man handed me a bundle of my old clothes. They were wrinkled and smelled strange, like dust and time. They looked too small for me now. I slowly put them on, feeling awkward and uncomfortable. Another man gave me some money. It wasn't much, just a few bills and coins. He said, "Good luck out there." I nodded but didn't say anything. I had forgotten how to talk to people after all these years. The big iron gate opened with a loud sound. I stepped outside. The sun was bright and hot. I closed my eyes tightly because the light hurt them. I felt the wind touch my face. It was warm and soft. I had not felt the real wind for so many years. I took a deep breath. The air was fresh and full of smells. Trees, cars, food, and people. My hands were still shaking. My heart was beating too fast. My legs felt weak, like they could give out at any moment. I looked around. People were walking in every direction. Cars zoomed past. The world was loud, busy, and alive. Everything looked so different from the world I had left behind 22 years ago. Big screens showed bright, moving pictures on buildings. People were walking around holding small phones, tapping on them and talking into them. Buses, trains, and shops were everywhere. I even saw children running and laughing. I stood there, not knowing what to do. I was free, but I had no home to go to. I had no job waiting for me. I had no family waiting with open arms. I was truly alone. I took one small step forward. My new life was starting, but I was scared. I stayed standing outside the prison for a long time. The world around me moved fast. People rushed past me without even looking. I felt small, like I didn't exist. My hands were cold even though the sun was shining. My heart kept pounding. I took another deep breath. The air was fresh, but it was not the same as prison air. It was full of smells, food, cars, flowers, life. I looked down at my clothes. They were old, too small, rough against my skin. They did not feel like they belonged to me anymore. I touched my face. My beard was long and my hair was messy. I hadn't seen myself in a mirror for many years. I felt like a stranger in my own body. I wanted to find a mirror, to see what I looked like now. I started walking slowly. My legs were weak. My steps were unsure. I passed shops with bright lights. I passed people drinking coffee, talking, laughing. I passed children playing with toys I didn't recognize. The world had changed so much. It was not the same world I remembered. I reached into my pocket. I had a little bit of money, but not enough for much. My stomach growled. I needed food. I needed water. I needed a place to sit down and think. I saw a small cafe on the corner. People were sitting outside, drinking coffee and eating sandwiches. It looked warm and safe. I was afraid to go inside. I didn't know how to order food anymore. I didn't know what to say to people, but I took a deep breath and pushed myself forward. The smell of fresh coffee hit me as I walked through the door. It was warm inside, and no one paid attention to me. Everyone was busy looking at their phones. I walked up to the counter. A young man stood there. He smiled at me and said, "What would you like?" His voice was kind and friendly. I didn't know what to say. My mind went blank. My words felt stuck inside me. I pointed at a sandwich and a cup of coffee. The young man told me the price. I pulled out my money with shaking hands and gave it to him. He handed me my food and drink. I found a small table in the corner and sat down. I took a deep breath. My new life had really started now. I picked up the sandwich. It was soft and warm in my hands. I took a bite. The taste exploded in my mouth. It was rich and full of flavour, so different from the cold, dry food I had eaten in prison. This was real food. This was freedom. I sipped the coffee. It was hot and a little bitter, but it felt good going down. For the first time in 22 years, I was eating as a free man. I sat there holding the warm cup of coffee. I watched people talking, laughing, staring at their phones. No one noticed me. It was like I was invisible. I realized that the world had moved on without me. Everything was different now. The cars, the clothes, the way people talked and laughed. Even the music was different. I felt like I didn't belong. I finished my food and stood up. My legs were still shaky, but I forced myself to keep moving. I walked out into the busy streets. The sun was high now. The city was buzzing with life. I needed to find a place to sleep. I had no home. I had no family. I had no friends. I didn't know where to go. I was just a man with no past and no future. I walked past stores with bright signs. I saw people carrying shopping bags, buying things, living their lives. I had no phone. I had no ID. I had no job. I had only the clothes on my back and the little money in my pocket. As I walked, I saw a man sitting on the sidewalk. He had a small bag and a sign. He was homeless. I looked at him, and for the first time, I truly understood how he felt. I kept walking, my heart heavy. I found a park with green grass and tall trees. It was quieter there, away from the noise of the city. I sat down on an empty bench. I closed my eyes and felt the soft wind on my face. I took a deep breath. I was free, but freedom felt heavy, like a burden I didn't know how to carry. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange and pink. People left the park to go home to their families. I had no home to go to. I had no family waiting for me. I looked up at the darkening sky. For 22 years, I had dreamed of being free, and now that I was free, I was scared. The night was coming, and I had nowhere to sleep. Chapter 2. The sun slowly disappeared behind the tall buildings, leaving the sky a deep, dark blue. The warm light faded, and the air became colder with every minute that passed. The streets were still full of people, busy going somewhere, rushing to their homes, their warm beds, their waiting families. I stood there feeling completely alone in the crowd. Everyone had somewhere to be, someone waiting for them. I had no one. I had no home to go to, no bed waiting for me, no warm blanket to wrap around myself. I only had the cold evening and my thin old jacket, which did not do much to keep the cold away. I pulled the jacket tighter around my body, but it did little to help. It was worn out and too small for me now, after all those years. I knew I needed to find a place to sleep before the night grew colder, but I had no idea where to go. My legs moved slowly as I walked back toward the park I had seen earlier. The benches were now empty. The families, children, and workers who filled the park during the day were all gone, tucked safely inside their homes. In the distance, the city lights shone brightly, painting the night sky with a faint glow. I sat down heavily on one of the cold benches. I leaned back and looked up at the night sky. The stars were small, scattered like tiny diamonds far above me. In prison, I could not see the stars. The windows were too small, placed too high, and the walls were too thick. Now, out here, I could see them clearly. But somehow, they did not make me feel any better. They made me feel even smaller, even more lost. I heard footsteps approaching from behind. I turned my head quickly, my heart beating faster. A man appeared, walking slowly toward me. He was older, his beard thick and grey, his eyes tired and hollow. He carried a small bag slung over his shoulder and wore many layers of clothes, one over the other, like he had been living outside for a long time. He looked at me and gave a small nod. "First night out?" he asked. His voice was rough, like sandpaper, but there was a kindness in it too. I did not speak. I simply nodded back. He sat down on the same bench, a few feet away from me. He sighed deeply, as if the weight of the world was sitting on his chest. "You'll get used to it," he said after a while. "The cold, the noise, the way people don't see you anymore. You just blend into the background." He reached into his small bag and pulled out a piece of dry bread. It looked rough and old, but he broke it in half without a second thought and handed one half to me. I hesitated. I did not want to take from someone who clearly had so little. But my stomach was empty, and my pride had long ago been broken inside those prison walls. Slowly, I reached out and took it. "Thank you," I said, my voice small and rough from disuse. The bread was dry, crumbling in my mouth, but it was still food. It was better than the endless cold and tasteless prison meals. We sat there in silence, sharing the little food we had under the open night sky. The city was loud beyond the park, full of honking cars and shouting people, but here in the park it was almost peaceful. After a while, the old man asked, "What did you do?" I looked at him, his face lit only by the distant city lights. His eyes were tired, but not cruel. "Nothing," I said simply. "I was innocent." He nodded slowly, like he understood. "Me too," he said. I did not know if he was telling the truth. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. It did not matter. Out here, under the stars, we were just two souls without homes, trying to survive one more night. The wind grew colder as the night deepened. The old man pulled his coat tighter around himself. lay down on the bench and closed his eyes. "Sleep, if you can," he said quietly. "Tomorrow will be another long day." I leaned back against the bench and stared up at the sky again. My first night of freedom was not how I'd imagined it all those years in prison. I had dreamed of coming home to a warm house, to hugs from family, to a hot meal waiting for me. Instead, I was alone, sleeping on a hard bench under the open sky. But despite it all, despite the cold, the hunger, the fear, I was free. And freedom, even when it was cold and lonely, still had to mean something. I woke up to the soft sound of birds singing. My body ached from sleeping on the hard bench, and the morning air was still cold, making my hands and face sting. I sat up slowly, my back stiff and sore. The old man was gone. His place on the bench was empty, and there was no sign of him anywhere. I looked around the park. It was early, and the city was just beginning to wake up. The streets were slowly filling with cars and people. Workers in suits hurried past. Children clutched their backpacks, and people rushed to cafes and buses, starting their busy day. Life went on, as if nothing had happened, as if I wasn't sitting there, lost and cold. My stomach growled loudly. I had no breakfast waiting for me, no hot cup of coffee, no home to go back to. I needed food. I needed a plan. I stood up, feeling the stiffness in my legs, and walked slowly toward the busy streets. Shops were opening. The smell of fresh bread, coffee, and fried food filled the air. It made my stomach ache even more. I reached into my pocket and felt the small amount of money I had left. It wasn't much, but maybe enough for something small. I found a small bakery on the corner. The smell inside was warm and sweet, pulling me in. I stood in line, feeling out of place among the other customers, who looked clean, busy, and full of purpose. When it was my turn, a woman behind the counter looked at me. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice wasn't rude, but it wasn't friendly either. It was just tired, like she had asked the same question 1,000 times already. I pointed to a simple piece of bread in the glass case. She told me the price. I pulled out the money from my pocket with shaking hands and gave it to her. She handed me the bread without looking at me again. "Thank you," I said softly. She didn't respond. I stepped outside, holding the warm bread in my hands like it was a treasure. I took a bite, and the warmth filled my mouth. It was soft and fresh, and it tasted like hope. I ate slowly, standing on the sidewalk, watching the world move around me. After I finished, I kept walking. I saw a crumpled newspaper lying on the ground and picked it up. I brushed the dirt off and read the date. 20 years. I had been locked away for 20 years. The world had moved forward without me. The names, the events, the people. They were all strangers. I did not recognize anything. It felt like waking up in a different world. I walked past a clothing store. Through the window, I saw people browsing racks of new clothes, shirts, pants, shoes. I touched my own clothes. They were old, small, and rough. I needed new clothes, but I had no money left. I kept walking, feeling the weight of my situation press down harder and harder. Freedom was beautiful, but it was also heavy. Freedom did not feed me. Freedom did not keep me warm. Boy. I saw a man standing near a building. He was older, wearing a neat suit, and he was handing out papers. I watched him for a while. People would walk by, take a paper, and keep moving. I got closer. I saw a small sign next to him. Help wanted. I hesitated. I needed a job. I needed money. I needed to start my life again, somehow. The man noticed me. "Looking for work?" he asked. His voice was direct but not unkind. I nodded. "Do you have experience?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but I did not know what to say. My last real job was 2 decades ago. I didn't even know if the things I had learned were useful anymore. "I can learn," I said quietly. He studied me for a moment, then handed me a piece of paper. "Come tomorrow morning," he said simply. I took the paper with shaking hands and looked at it. It was for a job at a warehouse, lifting boxes, organizing shelves. Hard, dirty work. But it was a start. It was something. I folded the paper carefully and put it in my pocket like it was the most important thing in the world. My heart was still heavy. My hands were still shaking. But inside me, a tiny spark of hope flickered to life. It wasn't just a job. It was a door. A small door opening after 20 long years of darkness. I didn't know if I could do it, but I had no choice. I had to try. It was all I had. I took a deep breath and started walking again. The city still felt big and loud, but it no longer felt quite as cold. I wasn't just a lost man anymore. I was a man with a future, however small it was. I found a small public bathroom and went inside. The mirror was cracked and dirty, but it was good enough. I stared at my reflection. My face was lined and weathered, my beard long, my hair wild. I barely recognized myself. Slowly, I splashed cold water on my face and tried to comb my hair with my fingers. I wanted to look different. I wanted to look new. The next morning, I went to the warehouse. It was a big old building, with trucks moving in and out. Men carried heavy boxes, pushed carts, shouted orders. It smelled of dust, oil, and sweat. I waited nervously by the entrance. The man from yesterday spotted me and nodded. "You're here," he said. I nodded back. "Follow me." He led me inside and pointed to a tall stack of boxes. "Start here," he said. "Move them to the other side." It was simple, heavy, back-breaking work. But it was work, real work. I placed my hands on the first box. It was heavier than I expected. My muscles screamed, but I lifted it. Step by step, box by box, I worked. My arms ached, my legs shook, sweat poured down my face. But I did not stop. Nobody asked about my past. Nobody looked at me like I was strange. Here, I was just another man trying to survive. When the day ended, the man handed me some money. My first pay. It was not much, but it was mine. I closed my fingers tightly around it. I stepped outside. The sun was setting behind the buildings. My body was tired. My hands were raw. My back hurt. But my heart was lighter than it had been in 20 years. I had survived prison. I had survived my first night. And now I had survived my first day of honest work. My new life had truly begun.